Welcome to
the Godzilla podcast,
the second episode, sort of
a re-record, but
of the Godzilla podcast.
We love this episode so much we decided to record it twice.
That's right. Yeah, sure, that's what happened.
A little behind the scenes. I was not in the audio of the recording of the American version of our original Godzilla for our first take. Here we are, take two.
Take two, a week later.
Lessons learned, patience gained.
Oh, man, it's...
We're lucky we have a deep love for each other in these films.
Oh, man. I was afraid when I sent you the text that was like, I'm so sorry. The audio is bad.
It went from... There was a wide range.
Please.
Here we go.
Please don't quit the show because there was a problem with the audio. I don't know what happened. Just Drew's side of the audio for our last commentary was bad. And you don't want to hear me having a conversation with myself. It's
especially when we're both giving long sides to one, argument.
Yep.
Here we go.
All right. So we are going to start Godzilla, King of the Monsters. And we got to remember to bring up stuff that we talked about last time. We can't just we can't
imagine.
We can't
that everybody
assume
knows.
that they know what we talked about last time. So we gotta, just go for it. But
it was interesting. I think we can do this.
I'm ready to watch this movie again. It's one of the better Godzilla movies anyway. So
yeah, exactly.
Let's go into it. Okay. I'm at the play movie button. This is the Gojira version of the movie, the DVD released in 2006, I think. And I'm pressing play in 3, 2, 1, go. Oh, man. So when were you first introduced to this movie, Drew?
I was in high school. I had watched a lot of the main serialization of the movies when they became a yearly thing, the 60s, 70s, probably even into the 80s films. I'd watched a lot of those over and over and over. And then eventually I thought to myself, wait, I haven't seen the original. And again, I didn't see the original. I saw the American version of the original.
You saw what we all considered to be the original for many years. In fact, I was under the impression, because I swear I read this in a book at the BYU library.
Okay.
I swear I read that they had shipped Raymond Burr over to film this movie in Japan.
Quite the opposite, but...
Quite wrong.
They did it much more cheap than that. Much cheaper.
Much cheaper. So this is pre Raymond Burr's Perry Mason. So he wasn't quite a TV star yet.
Still great acting skills he shows off in this film.
I think he is a pretty darn good actor. So how did this movie come to the United States?
It was quite a while after the original airing of the original showing of the Japanese film, correct?
Mm-hmm. It was a year later. Edmund Goldman, this one dude, he discovered the original Japanese language Godzilla at a screening that Toho was putting on in Los Angeles, and he decided to buy the rights for $25,000, which pretty cheap.
And how lucky we are.
I guess it was even cheap back then. And then he went around, he turned it over, and he sold it to Jewel Enterprises Incorporated, which was owned by Richard Kay and Harold Ross. And they successfully adapted this version that we're seeing right now for American audiences, and he made at least a $75,000 profit, since one of the investors for the movie they paid $100,000 for their share.
Yeah, that's a quick turnaround.
So Edmund Goldman made quite a bit of money for Godzilla.
Not doing much.
Yeah,
but I guess we could say thanks to him it came to America.
Mm-hmm. So the way that they adapted it is unusual.
Yeah, they took the original film and cut in scenes with Raymond Burr. I mean, we're going in the order of the films, so we've already viewed the Japanese one, and then to view this one, you're just seeing scenes placed into the original film. They did a good job of editing. It's interesting to have a new character in the film.
I think the best way that you can watch this movie is probably watch this one first, Godzilla King of the Monsters.
I agree.
And then go into Gojira.
Yeah.
Just because if you watch Gojira first or Godzilla first, you're going to watch Godzilla King of the Monsters and you're going to see all the scenes that were in the original, and you're going to see how Raymond Burr is just kind of shoved in there.
It takes you out of the film. It certainly took us out of the film.
It does, but I tell you what, for me, when I was a child, didn't notice a thing.
Yeah, and until we had viewed Gojira together, I mean, I had them both on DVD, just hadn't bothered to watch the original Japanese. I've watched anime, so I've watched plenty of Japanese, with subtitles and watched whatever. I just didn't feel like watching the Japanese version. I thought, the American version is enough.
Yeah, you're wrong.
Yes, I couldn't have been more wrong. Absolutely. I was proven very wrong.
It's funny how it's ingenious how they did it. It's not just placing him into the movie, but they restructured the entire film. Mm-hmm. I believe only 40 minutes of the original footage is remaining. Raymond Burr is playing a
newscaster?
news reporter, yeah. And he's going to go visit his friend, Dr. Serizawa. And, of course, Godzilla breaks free. But it's told in flashback, so Raymond Burr is here at the end of the movie after the attacks, and then the film goes back up until this point, and then it has its final sequence. But
yeah, I guess he's kind of telling the story of what happened from the beginning. Our very first scene is after the destruction in Gojira. You see the whole Tokyo or whatever, all the districts in Japan that were destroyed just in rubble. And that's a scene that's probably 2/3 of the way through the film, the original film.
Yeah, I think it's even further into the
near
film
the end.
than that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Smoking in planes.
There's a few interesting differences between the American footage shot and the Japanese footage shot. First off, the American footage, the film stock that they were using is cleaned up a lot better than the Japanese footage.
Very much.
So that's one thing. And then the type of direction used in both films is very different. There's a lot of Japanese filming style going on here with the Japanese stuff, and of course the American version's footage has a lot of American filming. And in other words, with the Japanese at the time in the 1950s, Shiro Honda, Akira Kurosawa, those guys, they like long lenses quite a bit.
Yeah, not to mention the framing of the shots and everything, how they did that in the Japanese filming style compared to the American, and it's kind of a jarring back and forth through the film. Doesn't take you out of the film, but you can see the difference. Go on, Joe.
Yeah. So the American style, however, so they did a lot of long lenses, a lot of telephoto lenses for the Japanese side, and they did a lot of wide shots. Now, a wide shot is not necessarily a wide lens. A telephoto lens flattens the image, and a wide lens kind of takes the image, a wider scope of the image, and then crunches it down so it has kind of a distortion around the edges, and that's how you can tell. Okay. Anyway, with telephoto, with people being flat up against each other, and the long shots, there's a very specific look to it. It almost looks like Japanese print. Have you ever seen Japanese print artistry? Yeah. Like images of geishas and stuff like that. There's a very specific look to those. And the long lens actually almost recreates that. Now, the American footage shot, they're shooting in a style that's very Hollywood.
Yeah, it looks like a film made in America at that time, or a TV show, how it would have been shot.
A lot of balanced medium shots here.
And not only that, the difference between the shots from the original film to this, so we can go into that, how this was taken on a sound stage, probably just on a set, and they had it's rumored that it all took place on one set, or is that confirmed?
That is, it's all rumor now. It's all hearsay.
It's been such a long time.
They, of course, didn't keep very good records. Raymond Burr himself said that he got hired for the job, and they did the entire film in one day.
So the sweat and the blood that you see on him was actual
so all the
sweat
sets,
and blood.
according to him, in the one studio, they had all these little sets. They couldn't really move the camera side to side very far because there wasn't any set there. And all these little sets, and he would just do one scene after another, after another, after another. Now, that's what he says. The production company involved stated that it took 4 to 5 days of filming. Now, I think that maybe Raymond Burr is right, and they did film it all in one day, but then they said they filmed it all in 4 days or 5 days because
they didn't want to get,
maybe there might be some legal issues there about overworking some people, and they didn't want to pay for overtime, maybe.
Yep.
I don't know. It just sounds like one of those situations if there's really a confusion there.
But if he did this in 24 hours, if that rumor is true, he persevered. He pulled off a good job.
Yeah. Now, they do keep a lot of the dialogue still in the Japanese, usually when Raymond Burr is watching something happen that he doesn't understand, But then sometimes that Japanese character, especially if it's one of the main cast from the original movie, if Raymond Burr is in the scene or if the two cast members are together alone,
English dub,
and a very awkward English dub.
Yeah, it seems like about halfway through the film, all of a sudden we start seeing people being dubbed, and actually there is the part on the island when they are, when Raymond Burr is there, and yet they chose to still dub the Japanese actors, and it is an interesting dub. They could have chosen a better voice actor.
Yeah, I think there was only like 2 or 3 voice actors cast for the entire movie, and they did the whole thing.
Yeah.
They did all the voices. I guess there weren't that many voices to do, though. Honestly.
Oh yeah. I mean, the main cast in the Japanese film is like 4 or 5 characters.
So they had decided that for American audiences, and this actually turned out to be the version that was shipped throughout the world a little bit more. Okay. It had a wider reach than the original Godzilla movie did.
Oh, that makes me a little bit sad.
And it actually went to Japan. Something that's really interesting. In one of these scenes when Raymond Burr is looking around and he's got his sidekick there, and the sidekick is translating for him.
Buddy.
I assume he's Hawaiian.
I thought you said you read that he was Hawaiian.
He's talking about how I think I heard he was Hawaiian, but
okay.
Don't print me on that.
All right. Okay.
I think they're talking about something completely different in Japanese, and then the translator tells Raymond Burr, this is what they said. Well, and it's different from what they actually said. And it's funny because this movie with subtitles was shipped to Japan. And so there must have been at least one awkward scene in there in which the guy is like, they're looking for ships or whatever.
Yeah,
they weren't actually
some language inception or something because they're watching a film that was taken from their native land, shipped to America, made into an American film, then shipped back to their land as a Japanese film turned American film, turned back into a Japanese film. Oh, that's a little convoluted.
Another thing here, I'm just noticing now about this movie, the American footage that's shot, they light Perry Mason. They light they light Raymond Burr like a star. They have a light above him and it's going down so it flattens out his face and it looks really good. Look at this footage here of the Japanese all in a crowd. It's dramatically lit. It's low-key lighting, so it doesn't quite have the sleekness of the American star lighting that they had before. Sorry, I know it's really kind of like...
No, and I wonder if in some of the scenes, just thinking about it with Emiko, if that's the way they lit her.
I'm sure they lit her.
Yeah, exactly, because she's beautiful. She's gorgeous.
I hadn't paid attention to lighting until just now. But.
Well, this is the third viewing.
This is the third viewing.
We're noticing things.
Some of the things they changed about this movie, of course, besides just putting Raymond Burr in there, they took out a lot of the anti-nuclear message from this movie. This movie, the original version of this movie, Godzilla, it's heavy-handed almost. Well, it's not too heavy-handed. I think it works, but
Yeah.
you know that the movie is anti-nuclear weapons,
Yep.
anti-nuclear bombs, anti-war. And they took most of that out. The only thing that they really kept in was the explanation that Godzilla was made from an N-bomb test.
Yeah.
That's it. Everything else, though, like, you know, if people keep doing nuclear tests, you know,
There could be more of these monsters.
There could be more of these monsters. That's completely taken out.
Yep.
Yeah, and all the kind of, I don't know. Yeah.
It feels different because they were giving it to an audience where we were the ones that dropped the bombs, and you know, you have to be a little bit more apologetic in your response. Also, American audiences weren't the ones to firsthand experience that. The Japanese people would have felt differently, and so it was made differently. But yeah, just the things they chose to cut out are very interesting.
So apparently, this was one of the few American films released in this time, because I guess the early to mid 1950s, all the theaters were going to widescreen.
Oh, this is definitely not in widescreen.
This is still a full screen movie, and so it's likely that since about 70% of movie theaters had changed over to widescreen, that this movie, despite being a full screen formatted movie, it was probably, the tops and bottoms were probably cut off when they projected the film.
Oh, so Godzilla got his head cut off in some of them.
So Godzilla
movies.
and Raymond Burr both had a haircut,
Oh.
which I thought was really funny. And I guess that version also made it to Japan.
Oh. Yeah. That just makes me feel bad for the people who made the movie and to have their vision compromised like that.
So, oh man. Okay. There is another version of this movie, by the way.
Is it the French?
It's Italian.
Okay, yes,
It's Italian version of the movie. That's called Godzilla. Or at least that's the name given to it by Godzilla fans, which I hadn't even heard of, so I guess I'm not that much of a Godzilla fan.
Why was it called Godzilla?
Godzilla because it's colored Godzilla. So what they did was this dude named Luigi Cozzi decided that he wanted the Italian people to see Godzilla, but he ended up getting the rights to the wrong movie.
Oh.
So he actually got the rights to this movie, Godzilla King of the Monsters, and Italian cinemas would not show the movie in black and white. They refused to.
So he had to color it?
This was in 1977, and he had to
Okay.
color the entire thing. So it's actually one of the first movies ever to be colorized from black and white.
I would love to see the color of Godzilla, whether he's gray or green.
In that version?
Yeah, and also
I
actually,
bet you could probably find it somewhere.
I wonder if you could find scenes of it on YouTube.
Says you
places.
can't. It's not really available except on like VHS, but I bet you could probably find it on YouTube. Yeah, like you were saying.
And then Godzilla's nuclear breath, would it be the distinctive blue, or would it have been like an actual fire breath? You know,
I don't know.
that would be cool.
They claim that Godzilla was always gray.
Yeah, until Godzilla 2000, I believe, is when they made him green for the first time, and I hadn't really noticed. I had never noticed the color of Godzilla. I thought he was a slight green, but more gray in the ones that I knew, the ones that I watched over and over. Godzilla vs. Mothra, Mechagodzilla, King Ghidorah, Gigan, all of those films.
So
We're viewing an interesting scene right now.
This is a great scene here. Raymond Burr, of course, intercut with the footage of the people doing their little dance thing to get Godzilla not to, to leave him alone, I assume is what they're doing here. And the old man that speaks in the original film, he has a very deep and grumbly voice, and you can actually hear him in the soundtrack of this scene. They kept the sound from the original movie. But then suddenly, randomly, his voice changes into a Godzilla kind of a voice.
It's the beginning, possibly the beginning of our hearing the really strange dub.
Yep.
I totally could have been that same actor, voice actor.
It could have been. It could have just been someone going, "Oh, we need something here."
And everybody looks. Okay, so Raymond Burr with his Hawaiian buddy, his unnamed Hawaiian buddy who translates for him, they're sitting around at this festivity, and they have several other extras sitting in front of them that are also in the shot. Raymond Burr asks the question, what was that monster's name again? The legendary beast?
Yeah.
And it's kind of an awkward second and a half pause. And then everybody, as if even the extras would have heard
What
the
did
question.
that man say?
Godzilla. Oh, I love it. This is Joe and mine, our favorite cut of Raymond. Well, the way that they spliced Raymond Burr into this footage when Godzilla shows up first on the island and isn't seen by people. He's also on the island, Raymond Burr and his companion, and that stage that they're on looks horrible.
Well, the rain effects, I think, mostly
yeah.
is what it is. Look at that.
Because the original Japanese version looks great. The way they lit it, the storm, the rain effects,
This is one of those
crushed
few
building.
scenes where it's kind of jarring when it goes back and forth between the footage. Once again, didn't notice when I was a kid.
Oh, yeah.
And I bet if I showed this movie to someone right now and they'd never seen the original version, I bet they wouldn't notice either.
Yeah, and I had only seen the American version. I had no problems with it either. And viewing the original film several times and appreciating it for the masterpiece, the cool film that it is. It's weird seeing it cut from the Japanese to Raymond Burr clutching a tree with his face. There we go.
Yeah, look at that.
Great time.
The wind just doesn't quite match the other footage. The rain just doesn't quite match. But I think a lot of the power of the movie is still in it, despite the fact that they whitewashed a little bit of
the message, the overall message.
Yeah, the message. And I know they didn't have Godzilla, killing the mother and her children.
He still does kill people.
On. Yeah, he still does kill people. You still see it, and then this scene, which is awesome, when the surviving member of the boat goes and looks up and sees Godzilla, I believe.
Oh, he survived the boat, but he didn't survive a house falling on top of him. Yeah. Godzilla probably destroyed this island just because he missed him the last time.
Yeah, maybe
he knew he missed him.
What do you think Godzilla's motives are
in this movie? That's a good question. Has he ever had motives per se?
There's another monster.
Yeah.
And it's his territory, and so he wants him out, and so he fights the monster.
Well, what are the motives of the monsters in Pacific Rim? Any giant monster movie, they just have to come up on land and start messing stuff up. I guess there's actually...
Weren't they, because the aliens were making
taking
them
over, and they needed to,
they needed something to destroy it, or
I don't know, maybe.
I think that was it.
Maybe, yeah, but maybe what we know of Godzilla's motives in quotes are that he's to show audiences the slow effect. Like, picture what happened with Hiroshima and I'm terrible with history, Nagasaki. Yeah, I just want to make sure I said it right. Shown but slower. It's same destruction, but more slowly.
I think it actually, despite being based on, the nuclear tests and the Lucky Dragon incident, I think it actually shows, it reflects the Tokyo fire bombings more than it does nuclear bombs themselves.
Yeah.
So I think it's, in general, an anti-war statement.
Oh, definitely.
So, besides his nuclear breath, of course.
Anti-giant monster.
The nuclear breath is definitely a nuclear thing.
So Godzilla as a concept being nuclear assault or, new not fully explored war tactics like, nuclear bombs and everything. It's just scary. I'm having so many brain farts tonight.
Are you?
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. It's like going through this a third time.
I know. What have I said? What haven't I said? What should I say
the
again?
tide just being out there like that.
No, he fixes it.
I know, he fixes it.
Wait,
is it fixed in the wide shot or?
Yep, it's fixed in the wide shot.
No, because I think I remember him fixing the tie.
So what we're watching?
I gotta wait for the cut back.
Yep.
But it just keeps showing Raymond Burr's face.
You know, they had to show off their star. He's a good-looking guy.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Okay, tail end of him fixing his tie. I think in the original movie, he actually fixes his tie.
Yeah.
Interesting. I bet that was on purpose. I bet the actor chose to have his tie undone and then had something for him to do while he delivered his speech.
Tell us a little bit about that actor, if you can.
I know he's the lead in Seventh Samurai, and I've seen him in a whole bunch of...
So he plays Dr. Nagasagi. Oh my gosh, that was the name of the...
Dr. Yamada.
Dr. Yamada. That was embarrassing.
He's He's an old and very respected Japanese actor.
And a terrible paleontologist in this film.
Horrible paleontologist. I do like the body double they use there.
Yeah, Raymond Burr's speaking to
Dr. Yamada.
Dr. Yamada, thank you.
Dr. Nagasaki.
Dr. Nagasaki. He's speaking to him, but it's only shown from one direction.
Oh, yeah.
Here's our extra that looks at the camera. The extras they chose were spectacular in this film.
Yes, they lit her like a star, by the way.
Yeah. I figured, because I just thought she looked so good in the movie.
Yeah. The boat is going away, and Raymond Burke goes to look out, I guess. Of course, he's on a little set, and there's like a little ship ring behind him, and he's just sitting there.
That's what we're seeing right now.
But the actors there, their eye lines don't quite match up. The actors waving goodbye on the boat versus the people waving goodbye on the land.
And then for just a brief moment, one of those extras looks at the camera.
All right, let's see if I can find this guy. What? How is he top billed? Let's see. Takashi Shimura says Japanese actor who appeared in over 200 films between 1934 and 1981.
Did you say 230? Mm-hmm. Wow.
He's particularly noted for his appearances in 21 of Akira Kurosawa's 30 films, including the lead actor in Drunken Angel, Ikiru, and Seven Samurai. So, wow. He has quite the career. That's why I recognize him so much. I've seen him, I've seen every Kurosawa movie, and of course, that means I've seen 21 of his movies.
Does he usually play a wise good guy?
No, not always. I've seen him play a bad guy.
Ooh, I would love to see him play a bad guy.
Yeah.
Hey, he somewhat plays a bad guy in this film. He's the one that's defending
let's leave
not killing Godzilla
alone. Let's just study him while he destroys Tokyo.
Yeah, he was the only one who had the foresight to think that he would be in so many films. We can't kill him. He needs to be filmed.
I haven't seen Godzilla Raids Again yet, despite owning it and having owned it for 2 years.
Can't wait to see that together.
I do not know how they are going to end or how they're going to bring Godzilla back.
Yeah, you'll hear our full reactions, our enjoyment at seeing whether Godzilla Raids Again, possible alternate timeline, possible Godzilla Resurrection, possibly a second Godzilla.
I don't know.
Yeah, we actually could be viewing.
They had to turn him into a skeleton at the end of the first movie.
Well, and then they show the skeleton dissolving as well.
There must have just been another Godzilla. I guess we'll find out now, won't we?
Godzilla.
By the way, there are 2 versions of Godzilla Raids Again that are quite different, apparently.
Oh, they are very different?
Yeah. The English language version is 2 minutes shorter and was heavily edited.
I would enjoy going through both of them as long as we go through both of them one time.
What are you saying?
I wouldn't mind viewing the Japanese film again. This American version, though. Okay, so where we're at in the film right now is where the English dubbing starts, and our English dubbing...
A trilobite.
He misspeaks so many times. He takes words that are simple words.
This is radioactive.
Radioactive. Godzilla.
Yeah, that's right. Godzilla.
The English dub actor.
And you know what? He may have been a bad paleontologist in Japanese, but they didn't change the fact that he was a bad paleontologist. He is still a bad paleontologist in his English dub. And in fact, Godzilla is still only 2 million years old, or at least his, species.
Yep. And I would still love to know how Godzilla came to pass. What's Godzilla? A tiny little sea lizard newt thing.
I don't know what he was.
And then
last time I said ichthyosaurus over and over again, and that was the wrong type of a creature. It was something else.
I needed to ask you, have you looked up ichthyosaurus?
I have looked up ichthyosaurus, and they just turned out to be an only water type ancient creature. I don't actually think they're dinosaurs, but I got them mixed up with something else, and there's no way I can look it up because they're huge words.
Our eye lines, the way the Japanese extra just was smiling. He had the biggest smile on his face as they're running away from Godzilla. So here's a little bit of our message to our American audiences. Little Hawaiian buddy falls down as he's running away from Godzilla. Godzilla's appearance for the first time coming over the hill on the island. Emiko gets picked up by her lover, and Raymond Burr picks up his
lover,
his little Hawaiian buddy. Yes, lover.
Little translator, man.
Yeah.
What is interesting about this movie that's kind of I can't say unusual because that might be inappropriate to say, but what's very politically correct about this movie is that Raymond Burr treats everybody with respect.
Yeah,
there's no belittling people just because they're Japanese. I mean, these Japanese people are smart. They're scientists. Besides, the paleontologist is just terrible, but that's never pointed out.
Aside from him being a news reporter as his, vocation, he comes to Japan because he is good friends with Dr. Serizawa. So he's got a Japanese friend.
So, interesting contrast to the internment camps of just a few years prior. So the director of this movie, we'll get into some of the people behind the scenes because we failed to do that in our first viewing of the same movie. This dude named Ishiro Honda made a bunch of kind of war propaganda movies during the Second World War. And basically after this movie, after the original Godzilla, which was his first big hit, that's mostly what he did for the rest of his life, was make giant monster movies.
Okay.
So I do want to read some of his credits here.
Did he mostly make Godzilla monster movies?
Godzilla, of course. Mostly, yes. But Rodan, 1956.
One of my favorites.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. There's some movies here that aren't. Battle in Outer Space. Mothra, 1961. Ooh. A standalone Mothra movie, by the way.
I have not seen that. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Gorath, which I assume is the giant monster movie. It sounds like one.
Yeah.
From 1962. King Kong versus Godzilla. He also directed. He did not direct Godzilla Raids Again. Godzilla versus Mothra, which is one of my favorite.
Definitely.
Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster.
Ooh,
Invasion of the Astro Monster. A War of Gargantuous. King Kong Escapes. Now, I think I'm going to have to look into this King Kong Escapes thing.
So there was a different Japanese version of the original King Kong movie, a totally different movie. And from screenshots I've seen, looks cool.
Let's see.
I would love to view that film.
It's some Japanese King Kong movie, which is really interesting.
Perhaps after I
don't know if you can really find it. What interests me most about Ishiro Honda was apparently at least one of Akira Kurosawa's earlier films, Stray Dog. He was kind of a supervisor to Akira Kurosawa, who we now know as like the greatest Japanese filmmaker of all time and is one of like the top 5 filmmakers of all time. It's just
I wanted to ask you last time.
He's so influential and he has so many like masterpieces under his belt.
Would you consider him to be the Japanese Spielberg? Possibly.
He's more like the Japanese Hitchcock.
Oh, okay. Wow. But
Spielberg takes a lot from Kurosawa himself. They both have about 30 films under their belt, so you could say that maybe. Yeah, so
draw some sort
so
of
he worked
comparison.
he worked over Kurosawa once, and then later on, after he was kind of done making movies, Ishiro Honda, he started working as an assistant director, I believe, or a production coordinator for Akira Kurosawa's last 5 movies that he ever made. Two of which are definitely worth seeing. Kagemusha from 1980, Ron in 1985, which is considered his last masterpiece movie. Akira Kurosawa's.
It's called Ron.
The movie Dreams, Rhapsody in August, and then Matadayo. So I bet he seemed like he was kind of close to Kurosawa, just based upon
Joe,
how often he worked with him.
You're missing your favorite splicing in of our.
Oh, yes.
Sir?
Dr. Serizawa's conversation over the telephone with Raymond Burr. Oh, it's beautiful.
He's being cut into the scene by Raymond Burr's on the phone. And this is all new footage for the American version where he's having the conversation with Serizawa. So it's a Japanese actor with a eye patch and his hair parted to the side. His whole face is obscured by beakers.
By beakers.
Yep. As he's on the phone.
Beautiful.
That's inventive.
Very.
Yep.
Their plot wasn't going to work without it. He needed to be friends with Serizawa.
And have a conversation with him somehow.
Now, I don't think there's too many moments of Serizawa just in close-up looking to the side or anything so they could do some over the shoulders. So obviously they had to get creative.
And did.
It's very creative. A very creative way of going about that scene. Wow.
Emiko being shown the oxygen destroyer.
So what's funny about this scene is that later on it becomes so it's a flashback within a flashback here. Because the whole movie
flashbackception. Yeah, that's true.
But then it gets out of one flashback and then goes into another flashback. So we double dip in the flashback twice in Godzilla King of the Monsters.
Very forward-thinking film of its time.
Very.
Years before Inception.
But, Citizen Kane, its narrative structure is all in flashback. So, and that was 1938. So it's not really a new thing, but definitely an unusual thing. Still today, most movies aren't told in entirety in flashback today. But
No.
Some are. This is still my favorite camera move.
Yep.
Look at that. Emiko looking into the thing and then panning over. And
they don't really do much of that in the original Japanese.
No, the camera's pretty still throughout most of this.
I wonder if there's symbolism in that.
I don't know.
Depends on...
It could have been symbolism, or it could have been this is a cool shot.
A cool shot, but I'm just saying that perhaps it's mid-film, and so it's showing a transition from one part of the film to the next.
And by the way, in case you guys weren't getting enough Godzilla King of the Monsters, there is a direct sequel to this movie that's not Godzilla Raids Again.
Really?
It's Godzilla 1985, which they also put Raymond Burr in.
So cool, the continuity
Just
there.
an old Raymond Burr in Godzilla 1985. Now, I have not actually seen that movie since... before you were born.
How did you view that film on VHS?
Yeah, on VHS, rented it from a Blockbuster.
I have to say,
and now it is a $38 VHS tape on Amazon.
I don't think I've ever seen a Godzilla film on VHS. I don't think so. I may have when I was younger, but it was really in my early teenage years when I got into viewing them on DVD.
Yeah, I was a kid. I was into all this stuff as a kid.
Lucky.
That was all
Power
VHS.
Rangers.
You got to rewind that before you take it back to Blockbuster. By the way, they don't like their movies not rewound.
Now dead. Blockbuster.
Godzilla is, or not Godzilla, but Blockbuster is dead. It's sad. Return to Godzilla is what Godzilla 1985 is out of the movie that it's out of, and I guess it ignores all the movies in between it.
Wow,
and
really?
This
That's
movie.
a lot of films.
So it's actually the direct sequel to this movie. I mean, another direct sequel to this movie.
For movie franchises that choose to do that, though, I really respect that and enjoy it because some of my favorite movies are slasher films, and sometimes they end up doing that. Halloween.
Jurassic World kind of did it. They didn't really talk about
Oh, that's true.
the Lost World Jurassic Park or Jurassic Park 3, any of the events in there.
Well, it did have a new cast as well, but yeah. It's the start of a new trilogy with just side note. You know the T-Rex in Jurassic World?
The T-Rex or the other one?
The T-Rex.
Okay, the T-Rex.
The new T-Rex, whatever that thing was called.
Not that.
The hybrid T-Rex. So the real T-Rex that fought the hybrid raptor T-Rex mutant thingy, that was the T-Rex from the original film. That's been confirmed as that.
Oh, and then story-wise it was. Like, they had to create a new 3D model, I'm sure. And
yeah. But just that it's the old pissed off T-Rex.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool.
Back to Godzilla, but more about dinosaurs and monsters.
You'll notice this, and I just noticed it in this scene when someone flips on a light in movies. You know, for us, we flip on a light and it's instant, right? The light just it comes on. In movies, you'll see a lot that people will blow out a candle, or they'll turn on a light, or they'll light a candle.
Yeah,
and you'll see just kind of a slow kind of either expansion of light or a slow reduction of light. That is because the light switch is not actually connected to anything.
Okay.
And so people on set are waiting for her to make the motion of moving it, and then they have to switch on their lights. So oftentimes, in fact, most times in movies, you'll see a small delay when someone's doing the light switch.
So that's not like, okay, so what I was thinking your comment would be along the same lines as when somebody's having a conversation on the phone in movies, they never say bye. They just end, it's like a normal conversation as if you were actually like looking at each other, and then it just kind of ends and they just quit talking to each other.
Get me James Bond or something.
Yeah, to the next, then they are on to their next action, to the next scene, to the next, like, speaking to another person as if they had just been speaking to somebody right next to them.
Yeah, it is. It's something that's been pointed out to me before. It is interesting.
I would be a little mad if I was in a movie and that kept happening to me. I kept trying to talk to the main character. He just keeps hanging up on me.
I hang up on people without saying bye sometimes. When I feel like they're about to say bye, I'm like, okay. And then I click. Does that make me an ass?
No, it does not. That makes you more of a butthole than the people who, because to my own mother and everybody else, if you know,
goodbye now, goodbye.
Well, no, it's
about that?
At the beginning of a conversation. You don't need to say, hi, I know who I'm calling.
Oh wow, really? You have to do that?
I do know that.
I just say hello.
I do too. I don't know. There are people who say that.
This is the DeGaulier residence.
This is actually where that music would take place.
That's where that one of the main themes of Godzilla comes out of. The dude who wrote that stuff, Akira Ifukube.
The man who got it right the first time, because a lot of this music that we hear, the iconic Godzilla music, like all the different themes that happen at different parts of the film, they're all still put into every Godzilla movie, and they came from the very first one.
Yep, Akira Ifukube was born in 1914. Was the son of a Shinto priest. Son of a preacher man. He was strongly influenced by traditional music, and he studied it at university, but then he also had to go to war, I guess.
Ooh.
And then he came back and he started doing movie soundtracks.
I'm really glad he survived that.
Yeah. He died in 2006. Man, that dude is old. Woo! He lived a long life.
Long, healthy, beautiful soundtrack arranging life.
So he had a bunch of orchestral stuff. He had some vocal arrangements, I guess. And then, of course, his numerous film scores, including for The Quiet Duel, the 1951 version of The Tale of Genji, Godzilla, of course. Rodan, he also did the soundtrack for.
Maybe that's one of the reasons I like that film so much.
He did the soundtracks for some of the Zatoichi movies, which are available on Hulu if anybody wants to go check those out. And yeah, looks like the later part of his life, he was going between Zatoichi movies and Godzilla movies.
I wonder how much of it was like different compositions of his original Godzilla music and how much of it was like new music, because I'm sure they made up themes for new monsters. That would be really cool to know which themes he made up.
I don't know. As we go on, I'm sure I'll look into some of the people who made this movie, and I'll find that out for you.
So cool. Every time I come here to do one of these, it's a renewing my Godzilla enthusiasm. Even redoing one.
See, I'm like, oh please, I don't want to record this ever again. You guys don't know how frustrating it is at home. Us sitting here for an hour and a half, spilling our heart outs about Godzilla.
We became very passionate in the last one.
And then we find out recording didn't work.
So here we are spilling our guts.
This is the second time ever in my podcasting career there's ever been a problem in recording.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Was it worse the first time?
Yeah, that was a whole episode of Ultima Final Fantasy, and that's a pain.
Ooh.
Yeah, that's a pain. I don't mind rewatching a movie as much. His eyes. Godzilla is finally attacking. Or for the first time. I think this is the one where he just goes in for a little while and then comes back, right? Or is that later?
This is his first introduction to
is this
to land invasion. So he's a virgin. He's taking his time. He doesn't pulls out pretty quick.
Yeah, he does. Man, I think that's one of the coolest moments of violence for me. Is when Godzilla picks up one of the train cars, holds it in his mouth, kind of spins it around like he's a baseball player, and then slams it down upon the people below him. Once again, no real motivation for Godzilla except that he is there to kill.
Yeah, he's
just there to cause destruction, just like war.
There's no reason. There's no reason to him, and that's another reason it makes him so terrifying. He just walks on the land, starts destroying all these man-made structures.
I had a conversation with a friend about, bad guys in movies, whether or not they should have a motivation or like a backstory behind them. And I got to say that I think, you put background characterization or motivation for a bad guy. But then at the same time, I think it can work just fine for a bad guy to cause destruction in a movie and not really have a reason.
I was for whatever reason, you just talking about this reminded me of Out of the Furnace. Have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't seen that movie. I want to.
It's okay. The storyline's a little flat. Not much happens. That's the whole thing, but it's a good movie. There isn't a reason for the bad guy to be bad. He's just a bad guy, and I believe it's Woody Harrelson. But yeah, it's real life. In real life, bad people, bad guys, people who, they're not evil, maybe, but they use other people for their own gain in wrong ways. They don't have to have a structured backstory to being an evil person. I mean, you use that to justify it in a movie or to make it more interesting, giving somebody a backstory, but they don't have to have one. Well, and Godzilla's one of those.
A recent pretty good villain, the Joker from The Dark Knight, of course. Yeah. Famous for not really having a reason for being anything, and it's never explained, and he's just horrible.
He doesn't have much of an origin story, really.
Another one, I would say Amon Goth from Schindler's List. He is nutso, and I've said this before on the Ultima show, I think. The man is just a sociopath. And Roger Ebert pointed out that, he uses war as just an excuse. Like, that's the evilness inside of him has always been there, and that the war was the thing that, made it come out. And so, like, Amongoth is another thing that, like, there's no reason for him to be the way he is. He is just horrible. And so maybe Godzilla not having a motivation, maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe it's actually like a plus to the movie, though.
Makes him more of a mystery character.
Maybe.
Rising from the depths.
So later on, when Godzilla actually has character besides just destroying things. Do you like the 60s Godzilla, the friendly Godzilla, the friendly dinosaur?
I definitely don't enjoy him when he's too friendly, but I enjoy him.
Do you like the anti-hero Godzilla more?
Yeah, and I'll always be more partial to that Godzilla. The adult me now enjoys the current Godzilla, like Godzilla 2000 onwards, and of course the remaking of him by Legendary. And I love that the most, but I will always be most partial to loving the friendly Godzilla, just because those are the films that I watched and rewatched. It's just too sad for me to see Godzilla be too friendly and too happy and too cheery. And
I think it was Godzilla versus Space Godzilla, where he's jumping up and down. He's like doing this weird like cheerleader thing. I don't even know what he's doing. It's a weird Godzilla jumping up and down dance thing.
That's the very first thing that came into my mind when you were talking friendly Godzilla. That really weird dance that he does when he's jumping up and down.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
Probably makes that noise too.
The first time in Godzilla movie history in which we use the military, and of course nothing happens.
And they have a solution to the Godzilla problem, a giant electric fence.
Repeats over and over and over again. I don't know if they ever use the fence ploy ever again.
I think they do.
You think so?
Yeah.
They're like, now we'll use even more electricity.
A bigger fence, a taller one.
Oh, man.
You know, I bet that they rebuild it, but just as a precautionary thing as they're, because it'll slow him down or that'll weaken him so that we can use our next wave of attack. I wonder how many Godzilla films, because I have seen Godzilla films where I swear they use another monster to take, like Godzilla versus Mothra. That's your friendly monster that's supposed to take out Godzilla.
He's the one that's supposed to protect thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The actual good monster.
Yeah, I think Godzilla in that one is a bad. Gosh, that's my favorite shot.
Oh, it looks so good.
I say a lot of things are my favorite shot, but there's a lot of...
it's these shots where, and we went on about this in our first viewing of Gojira, not, Godzilla King of the Monsters, what we're viewing now, but just the destruction scenes look so good in black and white. The way Godzilla's lit his suit, the way that the way that they did his sort of like reptilian kind of scales sort of looks cool.
I still love the special effect of the stuff melting. Oh, it's so cool. All right. I gotta stop. This is cool, guys.
Raymond Burr speaking. If you have a chance to view this film, please do.
Yes. Interesting way of telling the story of Godzilla is to narrate while he destroys the city, or at least intermittently as he destroys the city. And actually, I think it adds more of a human element to it, because in the original movie, I mean, this is one of the few things where I think they might have gotten something better, or might have done something better. The original movie, you see Godzilla destroying stuff, and it's sad, and it's dark, and it's cool looking sometimes, and everything. In this one, Raymond Burr just watching the destruction, and he has he's of course got the calm composure because he's a professional, but it's almost like, he's seeing the destruction happen, and there's a human face you can put on the witnessing of these horrors that's going on here. I
don't know why I have to disagree. I just feel, because I don't really have a reason for it, I just feel like I just wanted to see Godzilla destroy. But at least in the Japanese version, yes, for part of it, there are newscasters on the tower that talk about Godzilla and what happens. But what we have instead, because yes, it is more silent, Godzilla rampaging, killing, destroying. Instead of Raymond Burr's constant narration,
like Gonzo in that shot.
What we have, like a Muppet. Yeah. What we have is the words spoken by people being killed by Godzilla, such as,
Yeah, that's true. That was taken out of there, but...
And I love when they show close-ups of the feet destroying things. You can see the suit, moving like a suit in and out.
Either that or Godzilla's just stepping daintily as he
tiptoeing.
Walks across Tokyo.
Remember, that's how he went undetected on the island. He was tiptoeing around.
He must have been, yeah. In the middle of that storm. Yeah, I don't even know why he went on the island, I'll be honest.
Boredom.
Oh, let's see. I think it's later on when the Godzilla stop motion shot actually happens. I got to point it out because it's really unusual for the rest of the movie. Because most of the time the Godzilla is either a head puppet or he is in the full suit. But there is one little shot of this movie in which Godzilla is in the background moving around quite quickly. And I'm 99% sure it was a stop motion Godzilla going on there.
The real difference I can see between those varied Godzillas is it's all in the eyes. In the actual structure of the face even and the suit, I can't tell much of a difference. You can tell when it's an actor in a suit or not just by seeing it. But I'm saying the way he looks doesn't look that much different. Mm-hmm. But the eyes look very different.
Gosh, the black and white adds so much to this movie that you kind of lose it in the color movies, honestly.
Yeah, and you'd have to direct a film from the perspective that from knowing that you're going to make it in black and white. But I would love to see a new Godzilla film done in black and white if it had a good enough storyline. Oh, God. And we were so wrong in our first viewing of this film where we thought, oh, it doesn't show, killings in the American version. Oh, no, it does.
It does. It still doesn't show the one. And it's not like it showed the one before, but it was made. But
very
the
clear.
mother is there with her children, and then Godzilla comes to the building. But the building is made more clear in the Japanese version. That's the same building that the mother and children are at. Yeah. But in this one, of course, it's Raymond Burr in the building, and he somehow survives the crushing of his building.
It's a big building.
Later on in the scene, yeah, it's
big brick building.
It's a lot of stuff that could potentially harm a man.
Perry Mason is very tough.
He is very tough. Of course, he did get he was very lucky in his fall. There was that beam just above him. Remember? Somehow that makes it better. Oh man. Oh, there's one stop motion there. The tail being whipped around it was either high speed or it was in stop motion. I'm not sure.
Yeah, because most of the time when you see just the lower half of Godzilla, it looks like it's zoomed in here.
It's some of the exposure is taken out because they have another piece of film on it in which someone drew that.
Oh.
So it lights up the shot.
In which they drew on whenever Godzilla uses his nuclear breath. You see that they drew on to his three sets of back spikes to make it look like they're charging up for his blast, and then as he's
there it is. There's stop motion Godzilla. See that? The jerky motion.
Very Muppet. Yeah, you can tell that he's not walking because the body isn't moving up and down at all. It's just moving across the screen.
So that's one of the few moments of, or one of maybe two moments of stop motion or high-speed camera work. Now, they did want, the original filmmakers did want to make this in stop motion beforehand, but they, of course, needed the movie to come out in a year, and they didn't have the 4 years that it would have taken for them to make a Japanese King Kong.
Yeah.
Like they did with the Willis O'Brien stuff.
That, and thank goodness, through this film, they really pioneered the film trend of something called suitmation, and that's an actor in a giant monster suit. I
do think that stop motion animation is generally better. I do think it looks a lot better than suit, but there is kind of a charm to this stuff.
Yeah, because
of course you can't have the giant ape and the giant dinosaur wrestle in stop motion quite as convincingly. That's
because you can have them wrestle in stop motion as King Kong does in the original King Kong with the T-Rex.
That's true.
But
spoke too soon.
It just seeing an actual actor in a suit. Something about it, because even now, as an adult, you know that it's a person in a suit. Still looks cool. Still want to believe it. Still very believe. My suspension of belief is still there.
Suspension of disbelief.
Disbelief. Thank you. I felt wrong saying that the first time, but my suspension of disbelief is still there. But as a kid, it made Godzilla feel all that more real. Seeing an actor in a suit.
The way they cut this together, I'm not sure the order in the Japanese version, but in this version, it does look like, as the film continues, and especially in this sequence, because of course they're setting it up, it's like Godzilla's getting closer and closer to Raymond Burr.
And now Raymond Burr's looking up at Godzilla.
Yeah.
As Godzilla's just plowing over the buildings directly in front of him.
Ah, it's a cool part. It almost looks like Godzilla should be like shooting his fire at Raymond Burr, but obviously they couldn't recreate that. So here he is, Raymond Burr. Look at that. And he's just fine.
Just being crushed. I know.
The building keeps falling on top of him, but he's fine where he's at.
You get to see this building fall and fall some more.
It's
fall
like, no,
more.
Let's see that again. Oh, I think, yeah, there it is. There's the string.
The string on the
Godzilla's tail. Yes. I kind of
string.
love seeing those strings.
And there's, so yes, we do see the mother and her 3 children closed up on.
Mm-hmm. Of course, the American audience does not get to hear what she's saying, which helps out.
Yeah, makes us feel a little less terrible.
But there's no destruction of the building she was that we assume that she was at.
Yep,
like there was in the original version.
We see them get killed.
I'm never sure where Dr. Serizawa lives. Like, does he live in town? Obviously, there's enough going on that they still have power and they still have cable.
Yeah.
They still have television going out. Not sure. Would that have been UHF or what would that have been?
All I know about UHF is
the movie, the Weird Al movie.
Weird Al movie.
I said that and then I thought
it
Weird
probably
Al.
means ultra high frequency. Probably.
I don't know what it means.
I can imagine just from watching the film, Serizawa and also Emiko and Dr. Nagasaki, that they all live outside of any like rural area. They just seem like they live on the outskirts around the country or something like that. So Dr. Serizawa was just viewing this like through a TV or on the radio, well, hearing it on the radio, the destruction. Because, I never noticed that. There's one shot of him kind of just looking anxious as he's hearing about this going on.
And they're so excited for the little airplanes to come and attack Godzilla. Of course, as you said last time, none of these things actually hit Godzilla, and what they do hit is the side of the studio, of course.
If I was the suit actor, I would be very happy that none of those firecrackers hit me.
That's true. It might have caused some burnage.
Suit starts melting on you.
I always thought that part was just cool looking. I didn't realize it was the studio on the side. The walls of the studio getting hit.
That, and it really, so before Godzilla just descended into the water, he kind of had his torso out. It's got to be the suit actor playing in the water because he was moving his arms. He was moving his arms like it's a person in a suit.
Dunked himself.
And there's those holes that are in the neck of the suit.
Oh, how did they get away with that? I'm still not sure if the actor's in that suit, honestly.
Well, what we saw was what it really looked like the actor in a suit, but he wasn't like fully descended into the water. Those holes still would have been out. And then it cut to like a jet, and then it went back, and he was, all you saw was the tail out of the water.
Okay. I'll take that. Fine.
We'll take that for them not subjecting their suit actor to like something terrible. Okay, and now it comes full circle, and we're seeing Raymond Burr in
we
the
know
building.
what happened.
Yeah.
So the suspense from the initial suspense of the original Japanese film is what is causing all this stuff that's happening, which of course would have been ruined by the movie poster as the people went into the movie theater.
Yeah.
But the Americanized version of the film, the suspense is caused by Raymond Burr saying there was a terrible destruction in Tokyo. And then we flash back and we have to wonder, okay, now what happened? What led to that?
Yep.
So It's interesting. I think they both kind of work in their own special way, but I don't know. I do feel like this movie doesn't have quite the slowness of the first third like the other one does.
No, and again, we compared it to the reboot because in the reboot, it's a lot slower, but you're given a lot for what you wait for.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I love how they cut from Emiko to to Steve Martin, and it's obviously a scene where Emiko was standing up, and apparently she's supposed to be kneeling down, and somehow that ceiling or just the wall just doesn't match up for where they are.
Not
but
at all.
We're cool with it. We don't even notice.
I think, they pull in tight enough on the Japanese version that you aren't fully able to tell.
Mm-hmm. It's still one of my favorite sections of the movie. This is why I'll rewatch the movie. It's not because of Godzilla necessarily, as cool as he is. It's because of stuff like this.
Oh yeah,
that was the human drama and Dr. Serizawa and the music, and it's cool.
What a perfect time for Serizawa to be like showing his secret to Emiko, because I believe in the original Japanese film they had already discovered Godzilla by the time Serizawa shows her this oxygen destroyer, but perhaps that's his motivation partially for showing it to her. I think he actually wants it to get out.
I think I don't know what he's doing. Honestly, why is he showing Emiko?
It's weighing heavily on him, and it's implied that they're betrothed.
They are betrothed.
Okay.
Yeah. I think they've been betrothed since like birth or something. And then of course she started, having a little fun with the other guy and
thinking he's hot stuff.
He's hot stuff. Yamata. Look at that. The corner of the wall is right behind her.
And then she's shown to be kneeling above a very small hall.
Oh. I do love the way that they put the two movies together.
Oh, they did it very interestingly.
Oh, man.
And I just, gotta say it, the accentless English. She just speaks perfect English.
She speaks perfect English. It doesn't even sound like the same person.
No, not at all. It's amazing.
It's amazing. Hey, so last time we went on a huge tirade about black and white movies. Do you want to explain exactly what we were talking about?
So how did that tirade start? I believe
started with you talking
out.
about monster movie, old Universal monster movies.
Well, and before we talked about that, the title shot of the film where it says Godzilla, King of All Monsters, it's extremely reminiscent of Universal monster films at the time because it's kind of wavy, curvy.
The typeface?
Yeah, the typeface, and then just the way the lettering. Yes. So I actually thought that I got off on the subject because you said something to the effect of people say they have a hard time viewing films like these. Maybe not our listening audience.
No, our listening audience shouldn't have a hard time watching movies like these.
No.
Because obviously we all grew up watching or maybe have fallen in love with watching old movies where people dressed up in suits and we just assume that there's supposed to be monsters destroying models of buildings or they're actually destroying Tokyo or whatever. We're cool with that. And when you were talking about suspension of disbelief, we all are like really willing to put out our disbelief just to watch and enjoy something that can be as hokey,
I wanted to say
cheap,
hokey,
but yet as awesome as a Godzilla movie. So I think you started talking about Universal Monster Pictures and how much you love them. And of course, I think I brought up the complaint that don't you just hate it when someone's like, that's a black and white movie, and so I won't watch it.
I won't watch it, or I can't watch it. It's too difficult for me to watch it. Yep, that's what started it.
That's exactly it.
So, the pacing of films.
The pacing of films.
Joe will refute what I say, but we can have a great discussion about this.
Okay. Well, don't set it up like that. Don't set it. This is going to be a great discussion because now I just kind of want to like shorten what we talked about last time, which is of course a horrible way of going about this. I like black and white movies, And there was
agree.
there was a couple decades that existed in which filmmakers and studios would decide whether or not a movie, like a script for a movie, whether or not that movie should have been in black and white or in color. And they decided upon that. Color movies have been around since like 15 years after movies were invented.
Yeah.
And a full-length color movie, I think the first one was Gone with the Wind in the late 30s.
What we're talking about is a period of transition where directors had the choice.
Mm-hmm.
And one of my favorite films, Night of the Living Dead, for budget reasons, was made in black and white, but that was really near the end of that era where most films in theaters would have been colorized, but that was black and white.
And so, like, you would look at the story and you would decide, hey, is this going to be a big budget kind of affair where we all go in and there's a lot of spectacle in it? Let's make that in color.
You want it in color, yeah.
And if it's a movie like a drama, or if it's a really dark movie like film noir, like a mystery or something like that,
some sort of
the right type
movie.
of thing for that, black and white. Then there was no question, and people still went to the movies. But I think it was about in 1960, a few years after this movie was released, it's Godzilla King of the Monsters. I think that was the last fully black and white movie to win Best Picture until The Artist in 2011. And of course, Schindler's List was mostly black and white, and that was in 93.
And that was definitely would have been a director's choice, obviously, in the 90s.
So obviously, it was the audience that decided that they wanted to watch color films.
Yeah.
Another thing that happened was that the pacing of movies has admittedly changed some.
I would say it changed in general
throughout the years.
I would say there was eras where perhaps it was slower in general for film. There's always going to be niche films.
Now, what we mean by slower, the movies are not necessarily longer.
No, not at all.
But they do give the film air to breathe.
Yep.
In today's movie world, with people like Michael Bay, and everybody makes fun of Michael Bay, but
he gives people what they want.
He gives people what they want. Quick cuts, action movies that you can't really actually tell what's going on too much.
No.
Because they're cutting so much, and they're in such... The film is taking place almost entirely in close-ups. That is something that's come out of possibly MTV and then experimental films from like the 70s and late 60s. That kind of style has just emerged. And also they're making action films a little differently now, and action stars can't really fight. And a great way to cover up an action star can't fight is by handheld cameras and quick cutting.
Exactly.
So yeah, you can watch Jackie Chan in a wide shot do a million great things, and it's just as exciting.
In Jackie Chan's earlier films, there's long sequences of him fighting where it's very obviously him doing dangerous things.
But can you imagine Emma Watson like going up and punching some people?
No. Or
no. If she was in a Michael Bay movie, this camera would be swinging around at a million miles an hour, and she would make the littlest motion, but it'll seem to be the biggest motion just based upon how they stage it and how they film it and how they cut it.
Yeah.
Originally, when films were being made in the 20s, they didn't really have the same problems that that the 30s through today have had. They didn't have that. The 20s and the 1910s were interesting because film was just becoming an art form almost. And so they were actually very experimental about how quick cuts were being made. So filmmakers like Eisenstein and Russian filmmakers were all into like this theory of montage. It's like this quick editing, by the way.
Yeah.
And this is in the silent era. But then we hit into 1930s. Or 1927, I believe, is when The Jazz Singer was released, which was the first sound film ever.
Okay.
Released to mass audiences. And it was a huge hit, and Hollywood decided, we're all going to sound. And of course, you can see this dramatized in The Sound of Music. What they had to do was they had to start filming movies as if they were a play. in the 30s. We're talking early 30s here. So
And-
it would all be in wide shot. The actors would move around the scene. The camera wouldn't move very much, and the actors couldn't really move that far away because they only had one microphone, and it was hidden somewhere on the set. And that's how they had to make the films. So
Just to set an example of all of that you're just speaking about, how it seems like a play, how they had to hide the mic for Halloween, which for us was just recently, as to the point of us, to the time of us recording this, I was rewatching the original Dracula with Bela Lugosi, and that's how the whole film feels. Very long. They have built sets, beautifully built sets for, Dracula's castle. And yeah, that's how they do it. They have the long shots. They have the hidden camera. They have the slower dialogue. They have characters' emotions being shown through their faces. Not so many quick cuts.
it's more theatrical acting.
Yeah,
also.
very much more theatrical.
And now acting was changed in the 50s. The 50s is actually a pretty big deal. And Godzilla, of course, came out of the 50s. And
yeah.
created this whole new genre of Japanese monster movies. But also there was method acting was starting to get into the movies. So the type of acting was changing. And new sound technologies made it easier for them to move the camera, move the actors, or do close-ups and like really like mix it up, I should say. And
Experiment more.
So we've seen since the 1930s up till now, just like the camera getting more and more free as it goes along. So I think it's less to do with like, when you hear things that are quicker now, or there's so many more cuts now.
And the main example.
First off, there are exceptions all the way around. There are exceptions from back in the day, all the way up till now, that have been and always will be really fast films, only now it's kind of the norm. And it's less to do with audience, like, oh, I need this quick cut. It feels good when I see a quick cut.
It's about
it has to do more with them repeating what's successful. And them just filmmakers wanting to be a little bit more creative with their approach. Of course, now it's
gotta make a summer blockbuster. Gotta have fast cuts.
Yeah, but there's always been good old films, and I suggest to the audience at home to never, ever, ever dismiss a movie just because it's in black and white. The reason why films worked is because they worked
under any directing circumstances, under any circumstance with how the film was shot at the technology at the time. A good film is a good film.
Yeah, a good film is a good film. It doesn't matter if it's in monochrome or if it's in Technicolor or if it's in really gritty kind of almost colorless film of the 1970s. If it's a good film, it's a good film. And so I just really hate it when people judge that. And I love the look of black and white movies. And I honestly wish that we lived in a time now where filmmakers just, looked at their film and was like, instead of it being like a special thing when it's in black and white, just like, this feels like a black and white movie. Let's do it in black and white. Of course, technology has changed with how they film stuff now, but
we won't get much more time to go on about our black and white films, since this film, the original Godzilla, King of the Monsters, are 2 podcasts I believe we'll do about Godzilla Raids Again, because there are 2 different versions. So those are the only black and white Godzilla films we'll be viewing. So watching a YouTube video about Mickey Mouse and black and white Mickey Mouse, one of the reasons they gave him gloves is so that you could see his hand moving across his body and be able to tell what their hands were doing. That's why all of the Disney characters were given white gloves or gloves, period.
It's not just then. Weird.
Yeah, it's not. There's a reason they did that.
There's not dudes just in the 1930s, like the whole thing was just the white glove.
White gloves. But
they're all walking around like Michael Jackson.
So that was animated, but then in black and white film, it's a whole different style of setting up a shot, a whole different way of lighting, a whole different... It looks so good. Just love the way that it looks.
I went off last time about how people were masters of cinema.
You know, we have 2 more black and white films.
We do have 2 more black and white movies to see. The Godzilla Raids Again, Japanese version, and Godzilla Raids Again, English version, which I've heard is terrible and I've never seen it.
We're going to love it.
Oh, we're going to love it. And I'm going to go off about how cinematographers back in the day knew what they were doing so much more than cinematographers do today with digital cameras. But, you know, I guess that's a discussion for another time. We're not going to go over for 20 minutes or whatever.
And I will interject in between your commentary in the future, your tirade, interject my little that I know about it. But I can just say from a lover, so I am a lover of old black and white films, especially Universal monster movies, the originals. You know what I know and what I love as a fan, what I know, what I've seen that I liked and what I really didn't. And I can't quite necessarily say why it bugged me, but perhaps you can elaborate on why perhaps I would have been bugged a little bit more or loved it so much, perhaps.
I have no context for whatever you're saying right now.
In the future.
Okay. I'm excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a line with Dr. Yamana talking about nuclear stuff, and he doesn't say it at the end of the movie. Completely.
Again, tone of the film changed.
Yeah, I never saw this other actor either. The guy who plays Yugata. I never saw him in any other Japanese movies. I wonder what his career was like. Don't we all wonder?
A one-time Japanese film actor. Yeah, and then there's Dr. Nagasaki sitting there.
Dr. Nagasaki.
He's sitting there, and we see the beginning of where he would have given his little speech about the effects of nuclear war, and then it's cut, and we see our 2 lovers speaking, and then it's cut back to him at the end of what would have been his speech.
Oh, man. Okay.
All right, we have some facts.
So this dude, Akira Takarada, who played Yugata in Godzilla and Godzilla King of the Monsters, of course.
Emiko's real lover.
Yeah, Emiko's real lover. Oh, yeah, Emiko. Should have been some sex scenes in this movie. Would have made it better.
Black and white.
Just in the English language version. So, like, they would have 2 people having sex, but of course their faces would be covered by something else.
They would have inserted Raymond Burr.
Yeah, of course.
Literally.
This was during censorship, so they wouldn't have allowed that. He returns in a lot of Godzilla movies. Godzilla vs. Mothra in 1964, apparently he's in. Invasion of the Astro Monster in 1965, which we'll also watch. Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster in 66.
Ooh, the Sea Monster.
And in 1992 with the Godzilla vs. Mothra then, and then Godzilla Final Wars in 2004.
Ooh, one of my favorites and one of Joe's least favorites.
Let's see. He was in a whole bunch of other Toho science fiction movies. The Last War, Frankenstein Conquers the World, the King Kong Escapes movie we're talking about, and Latitude Zero.
Was that a monster movie? Latitude Zero.
And apparently he was in a musical version of Gone with the Wind.
A Japanese musical version of Gone with the Wind. Sounds like a gem.
Let's see. Oh, never mind. He couldn't actually do it. He fell off a bulldozer, and so he was prevented from being in it. It was a stage production. That's too bad.
And that concludes
Godzilla King of the Monsters commentary part 2. Sorry, guys. You'll never hear part 1.
You can. It's Joe's.
You know what we forgot to do last time, though?
What?
We forgot to rank the Godzilla movies.
And then now we can actually start doing that because we're moving along in our series.
So we'll both have a separate ranking.
Okay.
For the films. I do this on Ultimate Final Fantasy. Whenever we get to a new Final Fantasy, we have to rank where it is in the main series. Now, luckily with Godzilla, there's not a whole bunch of spin-off series. It's just one series, so I don't have to worry about when we
there
go
are spin-off monster standalone movies, but
I'm not going to worry about those.
Yeah.
Not yet.
Not yet. So in the context of all of our Godzilla movies, we're ranking
Godzilla or Godzilla King of the Monsters. Which one's number 1? Which one's number 2 for you?
Definitely Gojira.
Why do you say that?
It's a lot more of a movie. It's more cohesive. I love the American version. Good movie. But I feel that the insertion of a new character makes the movie a little bit more confusing. unnecessarily confusing. It's not confusing. It's just you can't get as into it.
The Godzilla King of the Monsters is kind of ruined by watching Godzilla first.
Yeah, and not even by watching it first. I believe in watching it the other way around. Yeah. It's a less good film.
Yeah, our rankings are the same. Godzilla from 1954 on top. Godzilla King of the Monsters, next one down, 1956.
Yep.
All right, Drew. I think that's going to end it for today.
Okay.
I do want to remind you guys to go to GodzillaPodcast.com, join our forums there, talk to each other or talk to us about Godzilla, ask some questions that we can answer on the show, give us your reviews of the Godzilla shows or the Godzilla movies that we've already reviewed and done commentaries on, and future Godzilla movies that, of course, we'll get to.
Anything that said there could be included in a future podcast.
That is very true. You can follow me at Joseph DeGoldier. That's DEGOLYER.
And you can follow me at Gojira Jaeger. That's Gojira, JAEGER.
All right. Well, do you want to do an ending theme?
Let's do it.
Which one?
The only one I know. You
Okay.
you start us off on the other one.